I call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Tuesday, May 26, 2020, and the time is 7:00 p.m. Due to the current state emergency declarations, the Minnesota Stay Safe Plan, which includes limiting person-to-person contact due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being conducted via video conference in accordance with Minnesota State Statute 13D.021. In addition, the school board has determined that it's not feasible for at least one school board member or superintendent to be physically present at the regular meeting location, and that it is not feasible for the public to attend this meeting at the regular location. The district did make accommodations for public comment, which I will outline when we get to that portion of the agenda. Welcome board members and to those who are observing the meeting via our live stream broadcast. Procedurally, we will conduct the meeting using the same format as we have for our previous teleconference board meetings. We will begin by taking board members' attendance by roll call. Anita Ozzie will call the name of each board member in alphabetical order by last name. When your name is called, respond by saying present. Anita?
Broniak.
Present.
Gurwitz.
Present.
Hardy.
Present.
Iverson.
Present.
Pritchard.
Present.
Quinnell.
Present.
Stratmon.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Also present at this video conference meeting are Dr. Hillman, Superintendent, Anita Ozzie, Dr. Hillman's Administrative Assistant, Aaron Bailey, the district's Director of Community Education, Daryl Keller, Director of the district's Area Learning Center, and Saul Bagley from Wold Architects. Board members are asked to mute their microphone when they are not speaking. During the course of the meeting, when a motion and a second is required, Dr. Hillman will initiate the unmute for all board members. At the start of each discussion, as chair, I will call on each board member in alphabetical order by last name for any questions or comments. If you don't wish to speak, you are welcome to pass. I will conduct one round of questioning for board members. If board members have a follow-up question or comment, consider using the raise hand feature in order to be recognized by the chair. All votes on items for individual action will be conducted by roll call by Anita Ozzie. Each board member should wait until their name is called before voting. And because it's summer in Minnesota, I wanted to review the plan. There is the potential for a power outage this season with some potential impending storms. So if there is a power outage or other related weather issue during tonight's meeting, we will continue the meeting as long as we have quorum. If you lose power or need to step away from the meeting, please reconnect when able. You can let Dr. Hillman know your status via text message. And if we were to drop below quorum, we will consider it a recess until we can reestablish quorum. So that would be the plan. Hopefully, as they say on the airlines, in the unlikely event that that would happen, that's what we will do. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Access to the recording will be posted to the school district website as soon as possible. So with the procedural aspect of the meeting out of the way, we can move forward. Dr. Hillman, there were a few items in the table file.
Yes, in this evening's table file, we had just a couple of items and they were all personnel related. So there are a few additional appointments, a few additional changes of assignment, and a retirement.
Okay, thank you. We'll add those to the agenda as we move forward. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion.
Moved by Jeff. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ellen. So we will have a roll call vote for the approval of the agenda. Anita?
Broniak.
Aye.
Gurwitz.
Aye.
Hardy.
Aye.
Iverson.
Aye.
Pritchard.
Try one more time, Anita. Sorry about I thought I had unmuted everybody.
Pritchard,
I'm sorry. Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Stratmon,
Aye.
Excellent. Motion carries. The agenda is approved. We will move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for residents, property and business owners, parents, employees, and students of the Northfield Public School District to address the board. This is a listening opportunity for the board and not a time to debate an issue. To accommodate the public comment portion of our meeting, we made available on the district's website the ability for the public to submit feedback to the board via email by 5 p.m. today. All submissions that follow the district policy regarding public comment would be read by the board chair at this time. There were no public comments submitted for this board meeting. So with that, I will move on to announcements and recognitions. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, I have two this evening. The first is in lieu of our large Cinco de Mayo community celebration, a virtual celebration was held on May 5th. This celebrated include welcome messages from Mayor Rhonda Pownell and myself. Previously recorded performances by Bale Folclorio were shared and 2 $1,000 scholarships were awarded. One of the goals of this celebration is to raise scholarship funds to support our Latinx students. If you'd be interested in donating to the scholarship fund, you can do so by going to the district website and looking under the news section. Our second announcement this evening is we are thrilled to announce that Northfield High School had 111 students being recognized by the United Nations Association of the United States of America and interview in the second annual National Community Service Awards. This program has been designed to connect student community service activities and a commitment to sustainable development goals to transform our world. Students from Northfield High School delivered the most impact for SDG 3, good health and well-being. And so these are mostly students from our Northfield High School National Honor Society. And we're incredibly proud of the work that they've done. We do post the number of hours fairly regularly on our social media that they perform service in the community. The National Honor Society has really become a force of volunteerism within the Northfield Public Schools boundaries, and we're thrilled that the United Nations recognize them. And those are your announcements and recognitions for this evening, May 26th.
Okay, I will pause for a moment if board members have anything they would like to add. Okay, I would just add that since distance learning began, the Northfield Honors, or the Northfield Honor Society, National Honor Society, I'm sorry, logged over 350 hours of volunteer time. So they became very creative in the distance learning environment, and were still able to pay it forward and do a number of things within the community and virtually that were significant in terms of giving back and our community. So it's great. And of course, we have to acknowledge Ellen Muha and the work she does with these students. It's just outstanding. And we appreciate the effort that she took to nominate the students for this award. So her leadership is just really outstanding. Okay, we'll move on now to what has become our standard update. Lots to always share regarding COVID-19, distance learning, and district operations. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, well, thank you. And this evening, I want to focus on grading practices for the fourth quarter and second semester. And there was a narrative that was in your packet. And then I'll also highlight once again the summer free meals and the emergency childcare, and then some information about summer school and extended school year and community ed programming. So we are going to ask you to vote on something later in the meeting that we normally would have brought back to you twice, because as we know, our student handbooks you approve each June, and those carry the weight of policy. As we shifted to distance learning, it was very clear right away that we were most likely not going to be able to use the traditional grading practices, that are normally set up for a face-to-face environment. And so while we quickly made some movements to adjust the way that we were looking at grading, then the state also provided some guidance. Our plan is within their guidance. And we also then realized that it is something we need to ask you to approve. And so I'm going to be asking you later in the agenda to approve some temporary changes to our grading systems. And I'm going to review those for you during this segment of the meeting. And so what I just want to share with you, as I outlined in the packet, is that Northfield Middle School, because of the abrupt change to distance learning, they immediately moved to a pass-fail system, and that eliminated letter grades and the pressure that sometimes puts on students for letter grades. And so also for the fourth quarter and then the second semester, the threshold for a passing grade is lowered from 60% to 50%. And I'm going to outline at the end just some numerous protections that have been put in place to protect students from failing to receive credit. And so that's the plan at Northfield Middle School, a true pass-fail system. At Northfield High School and Northfield Area Learning Center, they have moved to a hybrid system. And this includes that students, who maintain a letter grade of an A or a B, they will have that letter grade of an A or a B on their report card and then eventually their transcript, and those grades would be calculated as part of the GPA. Any student who would have received a C or a D will receive a P for passing for the fourth quarter or the second semester. And students below 50% would also would receive a failing grade for the fourth quarter or second semester. Again, there's quite a few different protections in place. We want to make sure that the pandemic does not adversely affect students' ability to gain credit. And there are a number of ways that we supported students to potentially help them gain credit. So we anticipate that there will be a few failing grades in the end, but we do need to leave it as a potential option for those students who willfully chose, not to engage in the distance learning process. And what I want to share about those various protections is, number one, any pass or fail grade on any of the secondary school report cards will be preceded by the letter C, notifying it as it was related to COVID-19. So if a student receives a passing grade, it'll be CP, and a student who were to receive a failing grade, it would be CF, just to indicate, again, as we move forward, that this was something that was related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So there's a historical process to make sure people understand why there was a change. And then in addition, there are a number of different supporting mechanisms for students. So for example, not only did we reduce one time, just as again temporary, just for the 2019-20 school year for the fourth quarter and the second semester, we not only reduced the passing percentage to 50%, what we also did is we also created 3 different components that if a student met one of that criteria, even if they had less than a 50% of their points for the fourth quarter, they could still earn a CP for COVID pass. That would be if they attended at least 50% or more of the live Zoom sessions for the course. They submitted 50% or more of the graded assignments for that quarter. So that would show the students had submitted a number of pieces, but maybe they just didn't do very well on them and needed some additional assistance. And then one other support is that any student who engaged in any kind of tutoring, academic coaching, peer coaching, or other kinds of formalized assistance from the building, if they accepted help, which we know that we believe every student who was deemed to be behind in some way, shape, or form was offered help in a variety of different ways, we would also help them to earn credit in this unique time. And then as a further fail-safe, we are weighting the third quarter at 60% and the fourth quarter at 40%. Now, since we wrote these guidelines, we know there are a handful of students who really have thrived in distance learning, and that adjustment can be made on a case-by-case basis with each individual student, their counselor, and the building principal. And if there are report cards, the report cards that do have a CF or a COVID failing grade on them, there is another layer of protection that all 3 of the buildings have a specialized COVID-19 grade review team. And before the finalization of that failing grade, the COVID-19 building level team comprised of teachers and administrators would review, did the student was there anything in the student's life that may have prevented them from engaging that we weren't aware of? Did our teachers do everything that they could to try to reach out to make sure that this student had all of the opportunities and support to pass the course? And we feel this is really important because, of course, this is historic. This time is something that is obviously surreal, and it was an abrupt change. And so We, of course, maintain our high level of academic expectation, but we have felt that this one-time modification to these grading scales and the way that we do grading at the secondary level was something was really important to support students. The vast majority of students have done well in this environment, but we also know that there is a group of students who have struggled or who needed some additional assistance. They have an additional week beyond the end of formal instruction to have some help to make sure they can be successful in completing the term. So we really feel we've provided students with a lot of opportunity to be successful and the resources to do so. At the elementary level, we normally at the end of the second semester would have provided a report card that included a 4, 3, 2, 1 grading scale, with 4 being the highest. And in lieu of that, Northfield elementary schools are going to be issuing what's called a closure conference report. And I had included a copy of the closure conference report in your packet. It demonstrates, it shows to the parent, what percentage of Zoom meetings did their student participate in. And then it gives the student or the teacher, the opportunity to say, here are the 3 areas that your student is really excelling in right now. And then here are 2 areas that you could work with your student over the summer to continue to increase their academic or social emotional learning capacity. And next week, every elementary teacher is going to meet with every family, and they're going to provide them this conference report, again, as a way to bring some closure to the end of the school year. And so those are the items that we're looking at with the grading changes. And again, that portion, I am going to ask you to adopt those temporary grading changes as presented this evening. And there's some question of whether or not we'd have to have you adopt those. I brought that question to the policy committee, and the policy committee felt it was wise to bring it to you and to ask you to approve those changes, those temporary changes this evening. I'm going to share a few other items with you here in my report today. Our Child Care Center for Tier 1 Emergency and Healthcare Workers continues to operate. We continue to average about 52 children per day, and that was the last calculation about 11 days ago. And then our summer free meals have continued through, and we have still had just amazing participation in that. And again, well over 40,000 meals that we have served, and really excited for what they have done for us as we, actually, I'm sorry, 70,000 meals as of May 15th. Want to share that there's a little bit of an addendum to the summer free meals that is in your packet. We got very excited last week because we had read from some new guidance from the U.S. Department of Agriculture that extended the waiver for non-congregate dining. And this is the waiver that has allowed us to do the meals as we've been doing them right now. And so that waiver extension goes through August 30th. And the initial thought was that that was going to allow us to extend continuing to serve meals exactly like we have been now on a reduced schedule. Our plan, if we're allowed to do that through the end of August, would be to serve meals 2 days a week. So on Monday, students would get meals for Monday and Tuesday. And on Wednesday, they'd get meals for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Our partner, Benjamin Bus, has pledged to do this through the summer under our existing contract at no additional fee. State representatives have now been reviewing that new guidance from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Aren't exactly sure it allows us to do what we are hoping to do. We know that we have the ability to do this through June 30th. We believe we're going to be able to continue to do it past that, but we are still just awaiting some additional guidance now from the state. We were all excited last week, thinking when we saw the USDA change that was an exciting thing for us, but there's been some question about that guidance, and we're still awaiting information from the Department of Education. Stephanie Strummy has been working to look at that and say, are we able to keep doing it like we've been through the entire summer? And we've costed the model, and we believe that it will cash flow if we do that 2 days a week through the summer. Also, summer school age childcare, we just did finalize the options at the end of last week to host a fee-based childcare program for the summer. The governor had indicated that the emergency childcare program that we've been doing for free does come to an end on the last regularly scheduled day of school. For us, that would be June 5th. And then we are allowed to start a school-aged childcare program like we would have normally in the summer for a fee. And we are putting some restrictions on that this summer in terms of we are prioritizing families who can commit to 5 days a week. The new rules and regulations, which I've included in your packet as well, reduce us to having in one classroom 9 students and 1 adult. So that does change the way that our cost structure works. And so we're having to charge a bit more than what we did in the previous years at $45 per student per day. And then in order to make sure that we are able to just come out even on the program through the summer, we are asking families to commit to 5 days per week. That will be our priority. And we'll start the priority with tier 1 healthcare workers and emergency workers and go through the tiers, then come back up for anyone who does not want 5 days. And again, we have really subsidized appropriately. We're very happy to do so, the program that we've run since mid-March. However, community services cannot continue to support losing money in that situation. So by raising the price over what we normally would have done and really prioritizing people who can commit to every day, that's going to help us provide this really important childcare for the summer, while at the same time making the program cash flow so that we are at least breaking even or just slightly a little bit better than that. And then I want to share with you just a little bit about the summer school, special education, extended school year, and community ed programming. We are going to be making some finalized decisions on these later this week. Right now, our default position for our extended school year program and our summer school programs, which include both credit recovery and summer targeted services, is that those programs will be offered via distance learning. The state is offering an opportunity for school districts to provide a hybrid program, but there's some questions that if we bring one group of those three in and allow a hybrid program with one program, then we need to do that for all of them. There's also some questions that we have when it comes to personal protective equipment, especially with extended school year students. So for example, a student with a severe disability who would require personal care, for example, they may need to be changed. The staff member, because they would not be able to socially distance during that process, they would need to be in full PPE or personal protective equipment. That would include not only a face mask, but a face shield, a gown, and gloves. And as we all know, we've read that even our healthcare industry is having difficulty ascertaining some of that equipment. So we are looking at, is there a possibility for us to do some kind of hybrid program? We've communicated with our extended school year families that we are planning for distance learning for that program for the summer. But if we were able to make a hybrid program work effectively, we would look to do so. We just are not convinced that we are able to do that with those programs at this time. Community services, community education, we are looking to try to offer some of those programs. We're still getting some clarification on a few items from the state. And then we would not plan to start any of that programming at all until in late June. The guidelines would allow for up to 9 students in an area. Of course, a number of other safety protocols would be in place. And of course, that's a summer sign-up program that is something that is completely optional, where we specifically offer programming to the students in credit recovery, summer school, targeted services based on at-risk factors, and of course, extended school year is an option for some special education students depending on their individual education plan. So that's my COVID update for this time around, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I've got some experts here with us this evening, Daryl Keller, who is in charge of some of our summer school programming, and Aaron Bailey, Director of Community Education. If there are specific questions about those programs, I'm sure they would be happy to weigh in.
Excellent, thank you. I will go through board members alphabetically for questions or comments. Tom?
No question or comment.
Thank you. Amy?
Well, I have a question for Aaron, and it's just sort of, I'd like a general comment on all the summer programs through continuing ed and what's happening with those.
That's a good question. So as Matt said, we are going to make a final decision. So we've put out all the information for the childcare sites. So both Early Ventures and Kid Ventures, their registration information is out and people are now registering. And driver's education is another program where we've had clear guidance and it's already out. We will be offering the classroom virtually for the month of June. The state's waiver is just through the month of June, and then we will get further guidance for classes that are offered in July. And then after the stay-at-home order was lifted, we were able to go back to driving for behind the wheel. So we have resumed that as well, again, with a lot of precautions. Masks are being worn, gloves are being worn, the car gets fully sanitized between each driver. As far as classes like recreation and enrichment classes, we are going to finalize those decisions at the end of this week. We are looking, as Matt said, to the ability to offer classes at starting either the end of June or actually early July, moving anything possible to outdoors, and then also to limiting that group size where we would not have more than 10 in a group. So whether that is 9 kids and an instructor, or however that looks, but not changing that model. We've done a lot of research, kind of around how other people are teaching or instructing classes at this, in this sort of manner, so that we can do that best. And we will again follow all safety precautions. There will be health screening questions when people come in. There will be a mask worn by the staff if social distancing is ever broken. There will be either hand washing or sanitation or hand sanitizer as you come to the program. And then we're working, details. If you're a parent that's bringing it, where does that mean you go during the program so that you're not congregating anywhere that you shouldn't be as well?
And I think the key thing is that we plan to follow the state's guidance on these. And there's been a couple of questions about community education, if it's tied to the same exact rules as special education, credit recovery, and those kinds of programs. Our interpretation that it is not, but we are just verifying that interpretation this week. And so again, we would be following the guidelines set forth by the state for these kinds of programs.
Alan, oh, I'm sorry, Rob.
I have no questions.
Ellen.
Yes, I had a couple questions. One had to do with the grading piece, and maybe Daryl can answer this, is that I know the ALC has more frequent grading periods, and so I wondered if it's looking at this from the overall semester, or if each individual grading period will have this sort of CPCF, the same sort of structure.
Yep, so we do have 8 grading periods in a year. And so our 7th grading period ended right at around the beginning of May. And so we retroactively went back and changed the grades based on that guidance that the district had. And so we were already pretty close to that when our grading period, that was about when the decision was made. So it wasn't too close or too far off from when that was. So it wasn't like really far removed. But yeah, we did align with the grading scale that Dr. Hillman went through.
Okay, thank you. And then if you don't mind, I had one other sort of follow-up on the dealing with the Minnesota Department of Health and MDE guidelines that had been included in the packet. So Dr. Hillman, I had sort of 2 questions. One with this, I was overwhelmed. I was happy that you included it because it's really tells us the different issues that you're grappling with day to day on trying to ensure that we're following guidelines and keeping students safe in whatever situation, or evaluating how we can make next steps. So I was curious as to the childcare we would currently be offering for our first responders, how that compared to what was described. And then my second question was, there was an allusion to that the hybrid model being a potential pilot for the fall. And so I just wanted to get a sense from you if you had any inkling as to how serious we should be thinking about that.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Iverson, for those questions. And we'll take the Child Care Center one first. And the Department of Health guidance has changed since we were initially required to begin the emergency childcare. So, we started emergency childcare on Wednesday, March 18th, being told on Sunday, March 15th, that we would start emergency childcare on March 18th. And when we started that, there was a social distancing expectation, which we have done everything that we can to implement at the Child Care Center. What I will tell you is that getting kindergartners and first graders to socially distance is a trick that there are quite a few people involved in the Child Care Center who have decades of experience with elementary children. We continue to work as hard as we can on that, but that is a challenge, for students at that age. On a Friday, the CDC changed their guidance for adults to wear masks. Our team and several people spent all weekend making masks so that they were available for people who wanted them on that Monday. The CDC's guidance is that you should not make children wear masks unless you believe that they are capable of following the safety protocols for masks, like not touching their face and infecting the mask, which I think we all know how that works out, right? So we do not require children to wear masks. some choose to, right, Aaron? I mean, Aaron's part of the child, some do choose to. And we started by encouraging our staff to wear masks. And then over the past few weeks, as that guidance has changed, we've gone further than encouraging and are requiring people to wear masks when they are within 6 feet of someone or if they're in a common area. And even for adults, if you have been at the grocery store or if you've worn a mask, it takes some getting used to. And so we've provided a number of reminders for our staff and also making sure that people understand the circumstances as we move forward. So Aaron and I reflected upon this today, and we believe that, you know, what we're currently doing in the child care center actually exceeds what those requirements are, because we're sanitizing the restrooms multiple times per day. We're cleaning toys that are there at least once a day as well. Each of the rooms is being sanitized by our custodians. We actually have a sanitization schedule on every space that is used by the child care center, and the custodian initials that they use the fogger, which we use the fogger on it in the morning. And then in addition, we do still allow the child care center students to use the playground, and that is hand sanitized each day by the head custodian at Bridgewater. He goes out with a bottle of the disinfectant and he sprays down the equipment. So we believe we actually already exceed to a certain extent those safety guidelines. I'll ask Erin if she wants to fill in anything else on that.
Yeah, the only other thing I think, if you're asking too about changes, Ellen, from the school. So starting this summer, we will actually, everyone who comes in the building will go through the temp check and the health and the screening questions. So we currently make all students and staff do that. We will also be doing that for parents as they drop off, knowing that the health and safety of everyone that's there and the ability to continue operating this childcare site is dependent on everybody that walks in that door. And so that we will implement those screenings when people come in the door as well. And then we've just implement, you know, kids and staff will wash hands every 2 hours in addition to when they come in the building. But otherwise we've put out this information recently. Again, it's the same things we've been practicing, but for new families who might choose to now weren't with us because they weren't part of that tier 1 employee list, we've put this back out there for people to be able to have it as they make their decisions. And then the only other comment I just was going to make, so Matt commented that we have had to increase our costs a little bit this year, and that is also due that we will have a nurse on there on site every day. That is who's administering the health screenings and the temp checks and tracking this. And if anyone should become ill during the day, obviously that will be, which is something we don't typically employ on a normal summer. But I also say we are providing breakfast and lunch free of charge each day. So I think when you do look at the cost, they do fall under the guidelines of what the food program that is able to be provided to the community. So Stephanie is able to reimburse on those, but we are not charging additional, and everyone does have the ability to have a free breakfast and lunch too.
Thanks, Aaron. Good point. And we were doing the health screenings pretty much from the get-go before it was something that was required. So we've been proud of the safety protocols that we've had in place at the current child care center, and we think that those are going to be a natural move to the summer-based one. The second question, is this what we have to look forward to in the fall, right, in terms of this? And I think there's a number of different points of view on that, one of which is that I really see that there being really 4 options for the fall. I think they vary in their percentage of probability, ranging from that we come back exclusively in distance learning to that we are back all face-to-face. I think that being back all face-to-face like normal is probably the least probable option. The middle two, there's one other option before I go into the partial or the hybrid option, would be the possibility of modifying the calendar and either pushing the start date of school back. That's something you can do as a board. We can modify the calendar. We've seen some colleges who've actually gone the other way. They are starting earlier than normal for a variety of reasons. And of course, higher ed and K-12 are a little bit different. But the hybrid model or the staggered start model that you're really referring to, Ellen, is something that we really think is under serious consideration. In that case, what we have looked at, our estimates would be that we potentially would be allowed to have, probably up to about 1/3 of the students in the building per day. If you look at the requirements for the summer school program, again, 9 students per classroom with 1 adult. No students are allowed to move, right? If you're going to have a specialist, or you may end up with, even at the secondary, you could end up with something like a European model where or an international model where teachers come to the students as opposed to the students changing classrooms. And, you know, we are working very closely. We're trying to land the plane for this school year, so to speak, to use the plane metaphor. And you're starting to see some people really speculate about the fall. Those places are mostly done with the school year, right? So they finished the school year a week ago or a couple of weeks ago, or in some cases in some other states a month ago. We need to get our people to land the plane of this school year. And then we're immediately going, as you know, next week on June 3rd, we have a district-wide debrief of our distance learning plan for this year and then looking ahead to next year. We're also involved in weekly calls with Rice County Public Health. And thanks to Anita Ozzie, Northfield Public Schools will be taking the lead in Rice County. We're going to convene people so that we can try to have some common health screening practices so that regardless if you go to a charter school in Nurstrand, Faribault Public Schools, or Northfield Public Schools, that the health screening process looks similar. Now, I just want for it to hypothetical. Let's say Bridgewater Elementary with roughly 600 students, right? Just slightly less than 600 students. And let's say that we could bring back 1/3 a day, or about 200 students. Imagine doing the health screening that Aaron just described with 200 children. And not only do we do it at school, but we're going to have to do it at the point of entry. So for some students, the point of entry is the bus. So we've talked with John Benjamin, who is already looking at if we are required to do a health screening upon the point of entry to the school. For many students, that's the bus. And how do we support the bus company, or how does the bus company make sure that they can do that? So that's just one practical problem. A few months ago, I would have said there's no way we can do that. Nothing is impossible. There are things that we had said were not doable for more than a decade that we had got done in about a week and a half, right? So there's absolutely, can we do it? Yes, it would be, it's going to look different. It's going to feel different if that's the model that we come back to. There's also could be a number of different nuances or variations of those 4 plans that I just mentioned. But if this is a, I don't think you're unwise to look at the guidance as the potential for the fall. And so those are just the, those are my thoughts about it at this point. I think that we could absolutely make a portion of people being back to face-to-face happen each day. It would not look or feel like what people normally would consider a regular school day, but it may be the option that we have.
Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Sorry, Julie, I took so long with that. I don't think we got through the whole list.
No, we went from Ellen and I asked Jeff.
No questions.
Okay. Noel, do you have any questions or comments?
I think it's just incredible how the school has been able to respond to all of the issues that are coming up so suddenly and with such professionalism. And I really commend everybody for doing that.
We have a good team of people who are working very hard to make sure that, you know, kids have what they need, that families have what they need, despite, as you read the guidance, it's quite precise. We'll just say that.
Well said, as always, Noel. So I had just one comment and a question. I'm glad Aaron is at the meeting tonight. Thank you so much for the incredible work that you are doing and your team. I mean, honestly, I agree with Ellen. You go through the MDE guidelines and it's just overwhelming, and you just stepped up your entire team and are doing incredible work. So thank you. And I had the fortune of being, I'm fortunate to be on the Community Services Advisory Council, and we had a meeting this evening right before the board meeting, and so Aaron was able to really detail a number of the programs and just all of the details that you have put together, and really the goal around getting people who want access to programming the access, and really taking into account all of the variables, and really having safety of people as paramount, but also understanding that people are looking for opportunities where their children and they themselves can participate in some things with, you know, all of the safety guidelines in place. it was heartwarming to hear that driver's ed is up and running. I think Aaron said about 65 people signed up within a very short amount of time. So that's just a really great win for those kids. You think about them sitting at home thinking, yay, I get to do driver's ed. I mean, again, that's just coming back to a little bit more normalcy, and no doubt that was just a really a boost for them. So Aaron, thank you. And I couldn't agree with Noel more. It's just absolutely phenomenal what our team has done, and I know we'll continue to do. One question, no, I had a comment too around the grading. I think the approach of the COVID-19 grade review team is really excellent. That's, you know, a team who's consistently is looking across with consistent direction to make those kinds of decisions. So I thought that's really excellent. My other question, elementary students, are they keeping their iPads over the summer?
Yes, so we sent out a message district-wide last week that said any student, of course, except for our seniors or students who are leaving, are going to be able to keep the school district iPad issued for the summer unless their parent would like to turn it in. And Director of Technology Services Kim Brisky had been working on developing the curbside drop-off. Again, no one getting out of their car, following all of the guidance that the state is giving us on these kinds of things. So if a family would like to turn their iPad in, they can choose to do so. Otherwise, we're going to ask students to keep them for the summer. We just think that that's the most realistic thing. And then, of course, if we are back face-to-face in the fall and need to collect those K2 iPads and redistribute them to classrooms, we can. But the default position is going to be allow students to keep their iPads unless their families would like to turn them in.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And then my last question, I believe I know the answer, the Kid Ventures for Tier 1 emergency and healthcare workers, obviously they will have access to that. That will be fee-based for them at that point after the June cutoff, correct?
That is correct.
That is correct, and that will open on June 15th. So we have, as we just make sure we have enough rooms set up and cleaned and sanitized and ready, have had a little turnover in there, that will open on June 15th.
Okay, excellent, thank you. All right, good questions, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Hillman, for the update. We will move on then to the Alternative Learning Center reauthorization. We welcome Daryl Keller tonight, the district's Area Learning Center Director. Daryl, it's really great to see you.
Good to see you too.
And Daryl, I'm going to pull your presentation up on my screen, and you can just tell me when you want me to change it to the next slide, and I can do that.
That sounds good.
Okay, go ahead, Daryl.
All right. So this is a new requirement this year that the Department of Education is requesting all SAP programs, which is state approved alternative programs, to complete. And so ALCs are in that group, and I'll go over kind of the differences here a little bit in a second or two. But this is a new process. The original date was June 30th that this was due. They've now pushed that into January because of the COVID difficulties and things like that. So they pushed back that due date a little bit, but it is a new requirement that the Department of Ed is requiring. So we'll jump right in. If you can go to the next slide. This is a little background. There's legislation that describes alternative programs, and for the legislation, they're frequently referred to as SAPs, or state approved alternative programs. The 4 different types are listed here. So ALC is the number 1. That's the first one, the most common. The number 2 is alternative learning programs. We have contracted alternative programs, and then targeted services is part of, it's a subgroup of number 1. And so the number 1, if you go to the next slide here, it describes a little bit more. So area learning centers, or ALCs, they're programs that have, each one of these 4 areas have slightly different criteria or requirements for them. The ALCs, they have these specific criteria. So the first one, they have to be in cooperation with 2 or more districts. Because it's area learning center, they serve the surrounding area, the region of that district. And so they should be in cooperation with 2 or more. The historic, and this kind of goes back to a little bit more of the history, has been that this has been an informal partnership. And so you just serve other districts surrounding. So if a student comes and says, yeah, I'd like to take a credit recovery class, or I'd like to enroll in your ALC, you honor that and you do that, talk with the other district's principal and go from there. This is formalizing that process a little more. And so you have to have part of the application, you have to go through and provide documentation of that partnership or that cooperating district. And so for ours, I've contacted Randolph and Tri-City United. So those are the 2 districts that we're in cooperation with. We serve quite a few of those districts through credit recovery. We do have some students that enroll in the ALC as well. And so those are the 2 that we're going to formalize that process with being the partners. The number 2, if you can go back, there it is. The number 2 reason, or number 2 qualifier requirement, if you will, is the comprehensive programming at middle and high school levels. And so it has to be a 6-12 program. And so what that basically means, most of the time at the middle school level, they call them mid-level programs. And so that's a 6-8 program. And then there's a 9-12 program, which is the high school level. And so our ALC is at Longfellow, that's a 9-12 program. So that's servicing grades 9 through 12. Our mid-level program is at the middle school, and it's a school within a school model called the WIL program. And you may have heard of the WIL program. That's our mid-level ALC program. And so in order to go into the WIL program, they have to meet the same qualifiers that they would have to at the ALC 9 through 12th grade. It's the same qualifiers for those. And in order to be an ALC, you have to have that in place as well. And so right now we have had the WIL program for several years, but we have not been coding it as a mid-level ALC. And so I've been working with Val in changing those codes so that it will become coded to that as our mid-level program. Then the third option is what we talked about a little bit today. It's a learning year programming offered at both levels. So that means there's a summer and a school year component to those. And so we do have summer credit recovery. We do have the summer BLAST program that covers our middle school students. And then we also have obviously the school year as the ALC and the WIL program for the school year program. And so there's the component that you have to offer year-round programming for all levels in order to be an ALC. Then if you meet the 1, 2, and 3, then number 4 is you may offer targeted services when the other conditions are met. And that's a K-8 program. And there's also an out of school time component. So after school, normally during the school year, what we do is after school is out, we have an hour and a half or so for targeted services programming during the school year. And then in the summer, we have our summer programming for PLUS, which is the K-5, and BLAST, which is the 6th through 8th grade levels. So those are the criteria for ALCs. As I mentioned a little bit before, the more background, historically, it's been much more informal. What the Department of Education, and this I haven't been told this, but this is just what I'm kind of reading between the lines. Department of Education, it sounded like, felt that the ALCs throughout the state, there's over 300 ALCs, have had kind of everyone was following the requirements, but following it with different interpretations. And so this reauthorization process is just going through making sure that everyone kind of has things formalized, their I's dotted and their T's crossed, that kind of thing, and just make everyone on more of the same page. And so that's what my guess is of why this came about this at this time, is just to formalize that the whole ALC or state alternative programs. And then, as I mentioned there, the state of the SAP update, it's a form, a document that I have to fill out. It's a little bit more, intense than just one-page form. There's some documentation and things that need to go along with it. So I'm gathering all that stuff up right now, and I'll probably be into the summer a little bit, but my goal is to try and have this submitted before June 30th, the original due date, even though it is now January 2021 that it needs to be due, but I'm going to try and get it all done by June 30th. So I mentioned some of this already. This is the Northfield ALC plan. So the formalized partnership of the two districts, we have Randolph and Tri-City that I've already talked with both of those districts, and they're more than excited to formalize this process because we have worked with them for several years already. The mid-level program is in existence, so we don't have to create it. We just have to document that it's there. And so we're in the process of doing that as well. And then there's a part where I have to detail the ALC programming, like every aspect of it. So our independent study program, what that, everything from how many FTEs do we have going towards that to what's the schedule of the day, the time of the day, all that stuff. The CLPs that have to be part of it. What's our CLP look like? That's the continual learning plan. And that's a goal setting tool for ALC students. So as they come in, they have I go through the CLP with everyone. It's a goal setting of where you at currently, what's your goals, where do you want to get to, and then how are you going to get there? And so we go through that process together through an intake process. And so I have to detail all that stuff out. That's why I say it's a little more intense than just filling out one questionnaire. So as I'm getting all this documentation together, those are the things that that our SAP update will contain. If you want to go to the next one. So here is the official outline, if you will. Maybe not quite official, but some of the things that I've already mentioned. So the details of the programming are listed there as well for the specific things that we have to do. Are there any questions for me at this time?
And board members, I just wanted to share, I asked Daryl to bring this forward because this is something that we're going to have to bring back for your approval at some point. So we just wanted to give you some initial information about it. And so if there are questions, I'm sure Daryl will be able to take them at this time.
No, thank you. We appreciate the great presentation. Tom, questions or comments?
No questions or comments.
Amy.
So I don't exactly understand what the partnership piece is with Randolph and Tri-City, what you already do with them and how that works, and can like Randolph also be partners with Cannon Falls, even though they're not part of our partnership? So if you could explain that a little bit more.
That is fantastic questions. So right now, as through this process, the guidance that I shared with you is where things are at. And then this started slightly before, it was about February or so, January, February. And then COVID came with full force. And so a lot of these conversations have been put onto the back burner. That's partly why they have extended the due date, because I started to dig into this and ask those exact questions of what exactly is this formal partnership consist of? Because there's one line in there that describes the fiscal agent. And so I was talking with Dr. Hillman, we were kind of dissecting the document. I put forth some questions to MDE asking, okay, what exactly does this fiscal agent responsibilities are? How does that work? And I haven't heard back quite yet. I've reached out a couple of times, so I'm gonna, that's one of my tasks for this summer, is to get more of these questions answered that come up. The further you get into the document, more of these questions come up. Right now, it doesn't seem that it's exclusive partnerships. So you could be partnered with more than one ALC or more than one district, but I also haven't had that question officially answered yet either. And so just going through, as I get into this summer, a large chunk of my summer will most likely be getting some of these questions answered while trying to plan for summer and fall as well. And so right now there's some questions that are not quite out there or haven't been explained fully yet.
Thank you.
Yeah. sorry about that kind of vague answer, but that's where things are at right now.
I'll ask again next time we talk to you.
Excellent.
Rob, questions or comments?
Thanks, Daryl. I have no questions.
Ellen?
No questions, but I just wanted to commend you, Daryl, because I know you've had to go through with the ALC so many other pieces of documentation and changes that have gotten thrown at you. And I just want to thank you because, you know, you're in the front line for helping our students and all that you're doing under distance learning. So thank you for actually, you know, beating the deadline. So thank you.
Jeff, questions or comments?
Thanks, Daryl, and no questions.
Noel?
No question. Great job. Thank you.
Well, Daryl, I certainly echo what Alan and Noel have said. I think that, you know, this is just an incredibly important programming for our students. So I appreciate your attention to the detail and to being proactive. My guess is when you ask these questions, they'll say, wow, you're the first person who's asked these. And no doubt Northfield will be a model submission. Of course, chills run down our spine when we think of MDE and reauthorization and what that takes to get our charter schools reauthorized. I get a sense from you that when you say complexity, that it's going to be an onerous effort, which is unfortunate. I think if they're asking for mounds and mounds of paperwork, I appreciate you being so positive in terms of your approach in getting this done. And thanks for your work with Randolph and Tri-City United. No doubt they're excited, and you reached out and really were proactive in developing these relationships because it is critical for us to continue to move forward to have those partnerships. One thing that I wanted to touch on the last time I believe you were at the board, we talked about you know, critically successful program, important. People understand how well they can do when they are at the ALC. And we've had some space issues, some space constraints. I know you said Randolph and Tri-City have already been sending students, but if you are anticipating that this may, with this more formalized partnership, maybe open up more students who want to come, and then is there any, I believe there's a waiting list process, but as fiscal agents, how will that potentially prioritize Northfield students if that were to occur?
Yep, that is the other question that I'm waiting on too, is the partnerships. How does that prioritize students? This last year, or the year that we're currently in here, is the first year that we've had a waiting list. And so we haven't had that like historically for a long time. And so we've kind of had some learning lessons along the way as well. And Dr. Yeoman helped figure some of those logistic type things with a waiting list. The big thing that I'm anticipating is, I think with the distance learning, there will be some increased credit recovery opportunities that students will need. And so right now I was actually on just kind of exchanging emails quite a bit with a Randolph student that was trying to get the last couple credits here for him to be able to be done at the end of this week. And so he was just finishing up some stuff. And so I think that's going to be by far kind of our main mode for these, for Randolph and Tri-City, is to have those credit recovery options. And so I've started the brainstorming process of what that could look like, kind of using some of the lessons that we've learned through this distance learning and applying those to our what we have traditionally had as our night class, and what that possibly could look like in the future, taking some of the things that have gone well with the distance learning and incorporating those to make it a little more accessible, a little more user-friendly, all those things. I think there's some things that we can definitely learn from this experience that we can help strengthen our program with.
That's excellent, thank you. And thank you for all of your work. As the board is always It's a wonderful opportunity for us when administrators are here, when we're doing teleconference from since the inception of distance learning, just to be able to look at you virtually and in the eye and say thank you, and to your staff, because we know the incredible amount of work, and I know you're scrambling with credit recovery right now with those students and reaching out and making sure everyone has what the support they need. So thank you so much, and good luck with this reauthorization. I know you will be before the board again. I understand this was a bit of surprise for ALCs to be told by MD that this process would take place, but I know that you are taking it as a positive and moving forward, so we appreciate that approach.
Julie, we did have one board member who had used the raise hand feature here in Zoom to the follow-up question. So Tom had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry for always jumping in at the end. Daryl, we're talking about the different scenarios for like the high school or whatever opening in the fall. Have you thought of that, and how might that impact you, or do you have enough space, or any other concerns or constraints?
Yeah, I've thought about that quite a bit, and it's I've learned quite a few lessons from the summer planning as well, because it's I'm naturally a planner, and so I like to have things planned out well in advance, but this is a situation where you really can't. And so I've learned to become more more comfortable in that area. So right now I've gone through quite a few scenarios in my head, at least, of what that could look like, how the planning, the logistics would work. Like I said, I think there's going to be some credit recovery need, not only for Northfield students, but the surrounding districts. And so trying to get some of those other opportunities, things that have gone well with the distance learning, that could be part of it. But there could be other things too that we're going to start to incorporate as we move forward, just to make sure that there's a lot of opportunity for students to regain credits if they've lost some, but also have different avenues of learning options. And so as a choice program of an alternative learning style, that's important to just have that available for students that may want something a little bit different. And so trying to navigate, the waiting list, but we're trying very hard not to limit that, so that we're trying to keep the doors open as much as we can, so we can offer that option to as many students as we can. But we do have some of those logistical concerns that we do have to address, and also the overall philosophy of relationship building, those kinds of things. We don't want to get too big too quick, because then some of those things get fallen by the wayside, and we want to keep that as our core.
If the students came back, or even like in thirds or whatever, would you be able to accommodate that too?
Oh, for sure. We'd make it work. We would for sure figure out a plan. I think for our students, the relationship building is really showing its strength right now through the distance learning, and students are really craving, that little bit of in-person. So if we can make it work where there's a little bit of in-person interaction and then some distance learning, that would be fantastic. It would be a step in the right direction for a lot of our staff, of saying we can, have a little bit of FaceTime, limited, cautious, but at least have some of that relationship building, because it's for the bulk of our students, that's their preferred style of learning, is through that relationship building that first. And so for us, that would be fantastic to have some sort of that. But I also am cautiously optimistic by planning for other options, because that it seems like the fall is not too far away, but right now it kind of seems like lifetimes away. So it's something where you have to plan for many different options of what it could look like.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Tom, for using the raise hand feature, and I encourage other board members to use that, as I will just continue with one round of questioning, but as board members have additional questions or comments, please either use the raise hand feature or just speak ups. We want to be sure that everyone's questions and comments are addressed. So, and thank you, Daryl. Take care, stay well, and thank you for all you're doing for your students. You just have an incredible sense of what it takes for those students to be successful. You work so hard and are so passionate about what you're doing, and we're so fortunate to have you as the ALC director.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now we will move on to our next item for discussion, which is the Longfellow building name change. Dr. Hillman, do you want to start the initial conversation on this?
Yes, and Julie, you and I will co-facilitate the conversation. As you know, when we made the change at the existing Greenville Park building to become the Northfield Community Education Center, one of the things that we've been intent on is making sure that some of these facilities adequately describe what takes place in them. And so, you know, the Longfellow building currently holds both the Area Learning Center and all of the early childhood programming for community education. But when you look at the state of Minnesota's website, the Northfield Area Learning Center is at the same exact address as is Longfellow School, which also is the Early Childhood Center program. And as we look at the early learning program, and as we look at moving the district offices into Longfellow, Julie and I have felt we wanted to bring this to the board to start just what process would we like to use so that that building is descriptive so that people know what they are doing when they go to the facility. You know, we had a lot of discussion about that when we did the Northfield Community Education Center naming discussion, and we felt it was time to start talking about that in terms of providing some specificity what's happening at the Longfellow building in regards to district offices. So Julie, I let in, and if you have thoughts, and we're not making any, we don't even have any names for you tonight. You know, we just wanted to share that this is a discussion that we're looking at starting. I'd anticipate bringing you some names for your consideration in June, and then going from there in terms of making any formal changes so that we can have that building queued up to be ready when the district office moves there in January of 2021.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hillman. Yes, I think we're talking about when we look at the buildings district-wide, how we identify them. And I think one aspect of the district office is a number of people who are choosing to enroll their students in the district or have outside vendors who have meetings, that if we say it's in the Longfellow building, it isn't as easy for them to locate if the building is just named Northfield Public Schools District Office, so that Anita or whomever is directing someone, they can just say, you know, the building is clearly identified. And then for the ALC to also be identified as part of what takes place in that building. So we would be looking at potentially not discontinuing the use of Longfellow as a name for that building, and then just going forward with clearly identifying the use of the building for anyone in the community who, you know, or outside of the community who needs to visit that building, that it would be clearly designated as the purpose, or what's, you know, the purpose of that building, as well as having the Area Learning Center be called out as well. So that's our wanted to talk about that with the board and get some thoughts on really being able to clearly identify what's going on in that building, as for ease of anyone who has to get there, I guess. So with that, I will ask board members if they have any questions or comments. One other aspect that Dr. Hillman and I talked about, and really a result of our wonderful work that our policy committee does, is if we wanted to consider going forward having a more formal facility naming policy. I know there's some districts, Austin for one, I know has a policy around how buildings are named. Not that we anticipate erecting any new buildings, but going forward, or if there was an occasion where someone wanted to sponsor something like, you know, refurbish and light tennis courts, or offer some sort of other type of facility, maybe not an entire building, but some sort of a facility. And then there would be a process by which the policy committee could establish how we as a district name our buildings. And that way it would be laid out in a more policy type structure rather than just an individual basis of naming something at the time that it would need to be done. So really two things then that we're teeing up tonight would be the Longfellow building name change to more clearly delineate the use of the building like we did with community education, and then the thought around having the policy committee establish a policy for naming facilities. So I will start the
And Julie, just
discussion.
one other
Dr.
item before we ask. So one of the key things is part of the plan that we have for the remodeling of the Longfellow facility is to provide for the first time with the Area Learning Center to have what Daryl and I call a mini marquee. We are identifying a specific door that will be electronically monitored. We've also, with the potential of students having a card that would allow them to access that door so it could be kept locked at all times. The ALC has never had its own entrance, nor has it had its own marquee. That is part of the plan for the new facility, which also allows us to really talk about this change in a couple of different ways. So I just offered that to make sure around the clarity of the dual residency, if you will, of the district offices and the Area Learning Center.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Hillman. Okay, I will ask for questions and comments around a couple of these things we've teed up. Tom.
Yeah, for the policy, would that also include renaming buildings potentially?
It could.
Yes, I think it could.
Okay, like Sibley, as we've has been brought up before. So obviously, whenever there's a policy and procedure, that's always good. So I support that. And then naming the building, maybe there's even two names: the Longfellow Alternative Learning Center and the Longfellow Administrative Building, especially since they'll have their own separate entrance. But otherwise, I don't have the magic name or names for it. But I think this is a great, good thing to get started. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Amy.
Well, on the policy, I think that's a good idea to have a formal policy, because it's better to have one in place before people start asking questions, because then we hopefully have thought it through objectively, and it would be a good guidance for making any decisions. For Longfellow renaming, I would be curious to know the history of the name, whether it was named after the poet, whether it was named after someone in Northfield, what the significance of that name is to Northfield, other than just it being the name of a school building. Yeah, because that could make a difference. Also, I think we have, whatever it is, 65, 70 years worth of tradition right now calling it Longfellow. So most of the people in Northfield are going to continue calling it Longfellow at some level. So I'm not opposed to renaming it, but we also have to keep in mind that it could be the district office in the Longfellow building, or the Alternative Learning Center in the Longfellow. Maybe we phase it out over time if that's what we want to do. But I think we learned from the various bonding issues that a lot of people in Northfield have a lot of connection to the buildings and the names. We learned it with the middle school when it was being sold to Carleton College. So there might be a lot of attachment by Northfield citizens to Longfellow as a name. So I'm not sure how we explore that, but I'm sure Jeff will be able to help us along that line. So yeah, I think we should consider different options. I think we should also talk to the ALC students and see what they're thinking, because I'd love to hear their thoughts on what their building could be named or should be named. And those are my comments.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Rob.
Well, I think it makes sense to have buildings named after their function, like the Northfield Community Education Center, or if they are I mean, obviously the high school and the middle school are named for their function. And I think that for the elementary schools, having them named for the neighborhood, since they're neighborhood schools, to have them named for the neighborhood that they're serving, like Bridgewater is the most obvious, I suppose, just named for that location. I think that Longfellow, it will be difficult to come up with a function name that combines those two different functions, but we have creative people, so I'll stand by and hear what your suggestions are going to be. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Rob. Ellen.
So I also like the idea of having a policy. I can imagine, you know, like the Gleason property, some of, you know, not just a building, but some of the facility pieces that there might be, you know, because you write a policy and then we're kind of done with for a while with things. But I think that there's, if you think of it from a broader perspective, like Julie was saying, you know, maybe there's new tennis courts that come up, and being able to you know, have a name so that people know which one they're meeting at. For the Longfellow building, I guess I would be really interested, like Amy's, in what the ALC thinks and what Daryl thinks. I'm thinking about the sense of belonging and community that's you're striving for, and what's in a name. I'm not sure. You know, I'm not the expert there, but it seems like that making sure that that sense of belonging, that we don't somehow inadvertently lose that. It seems like by having a marquee and an entrance that'll promote that, but I didn't know if there was any ties to Longfellow, or if there or anything else that the students would have.
I can jump in if that's okay. So the building name itself, since I've been there, this is just ending my 7th year, has not come up pretty much at all as far as the students connecting with the name. What we do is every 2 years we have a logo contest, and the students design a logo and then they vote on it. And then that's, we didn't want to have one that's permanent, like the high school and middle school, or, you know, the elementary schools have a logo that they've had for years. We want, because our population is pretty fluent, and we wanted to kind of keep it a little more fluid than that. And so that's really what our students identify, or that's kind of the piece that we hold, is we have that new logo every couple of years that just comes from the students, that they get to vote on, that's their logo for a couple of years, and they hold some pride in, you know, either developing it or voting on it or whatever it may be. So that's more ours. So the name itself, I don't think, it would be good to, you know, definitely ask them and see what their thoughts are, but historically that's a little bit more the route that our students have gone, is that logo is.
Thank you, Daryl. We appreciate your input. That was great. Jeff, questions or comments?
Yes, definite opinion. I grew up on St. Olaf Avenue. I walked about 5-6 blocks to Longfellow, as did my 2 brothers. I went there in kindergarten through 3rd grade. It's the best building we have. I would totally be opposed to renaming the building, and would oppose it highly publicly. It's Longfellow Elementary, formally. I would just call it the Longfellow Building, and that's where the district office and ALC is. So that'd be my comment. And, you know, no one, honestly, no one, if you don't call it Longfellow, no one, if you say that the ALC, the district office and the ALC is that, and they say, well, where is that? I mean, if you don't call it Longfellow, no one's going to know where it is, period. I mean, not the old people of, I mean, the residents of Northfield. And really, as our district building, I mean, that thing is probably realistically our most efficient building. So, I mean, that's just being born and raised here and being a townie. That's my opinion, and a graduate of Northfield High School.
Thanks, Jeff. Noel, questions or comments?
I believe the school was named after the poet, Longfellow, as frequently elementary schools are. Secondly, we have 2 buildings, Greenville and name escapes me. That are named after townships, Waterford and Neana. So but I like names that define the function. And I would support the idea of the Area Learning Center and the Northfield Schools District Office. But I do agree with Jeff that until the generation dies off, it'll be called Longfellow School, no matter what name you put on the front of the building. And we probably should then include that, at least for a period of time. Let's see. Regarding the policy, I believe we should work on a policy so it's in place. You know, I would say I'd build a bridge when you don't need it, so it's there when you do. So I would say let's work on a policy so that we can diffuse some strays that may come in that would like something specific done. And we've got a general policy that will cover it. That'd be my comments.
Excellent. Thank you, Noel. All right. Well, thank you to board members and to Daryl for your comments. I agree that it would be good to understand the history of Longfellow. I was trying to do some research on it. As you know, right before the pandemic hit, unfortunately, the Northfield Historical Society met with that unfortunate water damage, so wasn't clearly a good time for them to ask to do any research. So I will pursue that when it seems like that's a reasonable thing to ask the Northfield Historical Society. We can also reach out to Earl Weinman and see what he may know just from his work with the history of Northfield schools, so that we do understand that piece of it. I think what we will do then, based on board members' comments, is pursue the policy committee addressing a facility naming policy. I think that I understood there was support from the board for pursuing that. And then we will look to try to move this discussion at another time when we've had that policy in place, and then have the opportunity to look at the name. Again, really wanting to delineate, I think I heard board members' support for at least establishing some sort of signing that indicates the use of the building. And then if there's an additional name that goes with that, we can look at that in another discussion. But we did want to tee it up and get board members' input on this. So thank you. Dr. Hillman, was there anything else you wanted to add to the discussion?
No, I think we've covered it for this evening.
Okay, excellent. So handbooks, we have the first reading. Before we even begin, I have to acknowledge Anita Ozzie, because she has done an incredible job of trying to get this unwieldy sort of effort kind of centralized and sort of a process that makes sense and keeps it up to date. There's a lot of moving parts to the handbook. As you saw, a number of changes that just yearly need to take place, but then what other sort of policies and sort of changes. So it is an onerous effort, and we appreciate Anita taking it on and really helping each of the buildings get a handle on this. It's important that our families have updated handbooks and citizenship handbooks, so we appreciate that. Dr. Hillman, did you want to make any comments prior to asking questions or comments of each of the handbooks that were included in the packet?
No, I want to echo what you had indicated about Anita and the work that she has done to help streamline the process. We started to do that last year. I think that you saw some improvement in the process last year. I think you see even more improvement in the process this year, and you can expect us to continue to streamline those handbooks and make sure that they are as consistent as they can be, across all of them over time. There are not really too many changes this year. I think that's fair to say, Anita. We are looking at these handbooks as if we were coming back face to face. We felt that we needed to do that initially. Of course, as we work through the summer, any modifications or addendums that would need to happen are things that we can put together, because obviously there are some parts of the handbooks that if we're back in a distance learning or in some kind of hybrid model would need to be adjusted. We wanted to make sure we took care of the traditional component first, because that was something that we do every year, and then we'll move ahead with those. You'll also notice that we added some things to make them more prominent for parents. So, we have made sure that the bullying prohibition policy is something that is prominent in each of the handbooks now, in addition to the student citizenship handbook, as well as the harassment and Title IX complaint procedures being more prominent in each of the handbooks as well. So those are just a couple of the high level changes. Those were things that were in policy or in the student citizenship handbook, but we've just wanted to make those items more prominent for people, because they are looking to the handbook when they have a question on those kinds of issues. So it's the first reading. We know that there will probably be a few minor changes between now and the time that we ask you to adopt them, but we'd certainly take any questions or comments you have at this time.
Excellent, thank you. Tom, do you have any questions or comments on any of the handbooks?
I do. On the student citizen handbook, on the police referral part, is there a policy or a process that describes the interaction between the police and the school, and what the rights are of the students, of the parents, or it seems from this it's just vague that they'll get together, and that since people's rights and the consequences of things could be lifelong, I wonder if there's anything beyond just what it says here that describes that process. And I did find, like, the Eau Claire School District had a 2-page rules about how interviews that involve the police and the school can go, including, informing people of their rights and that they can leave, whatever. And I was just wondering, do we have anything? I looked through our policies and I didn't see anything, unless or at least nothing obvious. But if we don't, I think we should.
Yeah, Tom, and I would agree that we do have something, if you recall, we do have a policy that talks about the use of peace officers with special education students.
Right.
That's a policy that we updated fairly recently, but we have not had any policy around that. We have followed the existing case law and those kinds of protocols, but looking into an additional policy is something that we can certainly do if that's the will of the board.
It's certainly my suggestion that we do have a policy, because from what I've read and understood, it's not quite so non-controversial about the way the delineation between, if you're in a room with a school official and a police official in a school building, is it an official police business or is it school business, and the misinterpretations, whatever. So I think, like other school districts have, I think we would be wise to have a policy that describes that, and also that because parents don't know if they get called in, their kid is in there, and police officer or whatever, what their rights are, and they could end up doing things or saying things that would impact them or their child potentially lifelong. So I think it'd be my request that we look into this and formalize it as some sort of policy.
And Tom, that's probably not something I'll be able to get done by the next meeting. So,
yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Tom. Amy.
So I definitely am noticing improvements. I have memories from when my daughter was in school about how they were more difficult to read. And so thank you, Anita and Dr. Hillman, for your work that you put into these handbooks. And I do have a few minor edits that I will pass on to you, and you can use them if you want. And other than that, I also talked to Dr. Hillman a little bit about sort of ideas for the future, but I think I'm very impressed with all the other stuff going on, with all the other fires that had to be put out this year with COVID and distance learning that they've gone through, and they've been working on the handbooks as well. And continuous improvement is great. So thank you both.
Mostly Anita.
Thank you, Amy, for those comments. Rob, questions or comments?
I just had one thing on the high school handbook, I think, yeah. Under the bullying prohibition part, it says, while not required, the use of this form is encouraged to assist in a prompt investigation. It's not clear from what comes before that what form you're talking about. So is there a form included later in the handbook? Or, I mean, it's just hard to understand from that point in which form you're talking about.
Yeah, and Rob, that since these handbooks are now published on the website, there should be a link there to the form.
Okay, so that'll
be missing.
Okay, I see, because it is in blue, so that's probably meaning that that's a link that. Okay.
That's correct. Yep.
Excellent. That clarifies that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rob. Ellen, questions or comments?
No comments or questions.
Thank you. Jeff?
No comments or questions.
Okay. Noel?
No comments, no questions.
Okay, thank you. I had one question on the middle school handbook under attire. So it's the first part of the alphabet. There's not a page number, but it says hats, hoods, and head coverings are not permitted except for designated events and or permission from administration. And I'm just wondering, with the increased diversity that we're seeing in our schools, if there's some language we can put in there around head coverings for religious or cultural reasons, that be included in addition to permission from administration. So we're calling that out to the student right away, if that would make sense to do.
Yes, Julie, I think that does. And so I'm going to ask Anita to take a note on that, and we'll make sure that we clarify that. Again, for a long time, I think it was perfectly fine to be able to address it in the way that the middle school has. But I agree with you, Julie, as we continue to become a more diverse school district, ensuring that we call out that religious component of it is a vital thing.
Okay, excellent. All right, excellent. Thank you. And again, Anita, we cannot thank you enough. We have come light years from where we were, and it's just a really it's a much more comforting process for the board to review this. And so thank you. And I appreciate Amy giving some thought to ways we can continue to make this more streamlined as we move forward, because we know that this is an important part of governance that we as a board do. So we need to really understand and know what we are putting in each of these handbooks before we ultimately approve them. So we appreciate your work so much, Anita. And again, in light of everything going on, that you had the ability to address this this year is just really great. So thank you.
Julie, just 2 more items before we move on. Number one is that you'll notice that the early childhood and community education handbooks that are typically brought forward, they're not here tonight. They will come at another. Those are not as critical to have approved. At the June meeting, we can still approve those in July and August. That's not an issue. So we'll be having those come forward. And then just so people know, we already have a couple of minor changes that we'll be bringing forward, specifically the high school handbook. Tom mentioned a part about the search piece. We have some minor modification to the language based upon consultation with school district attorney about making sure it's the most updated language. And so there will be a couple of minor adjustments that we'll make between now and the next meeting as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, we will move on then to our last item for discussion, which is part of every board meeting as we move through the impact of COVID-19 financial update. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, I'm just going to keep this very brief because I've been pretty detailed on it in the last couple of meetings. You know about our concerns about the future legislative piece, as well as the short-term financial parts that are brought forward by the emergency child care program, as well as the food free meals for students. We've talked about those before. What I do want to share is that on a call last week with the Department of Education, the Department of Education's CFO, Denise Anderson, started to talk about 2 relief programs that we will see some funding from. One is called the GEARS program, and the other is called the ESSER program. And the ESSER program is part of the larger CARES Act. We understand that the ESSER funds will be distributed to school districts based upon their Title I allocation. We're still not exactly sure. They're still calculating some of those pieces. We also know that the guidance that the Department of Education is going to be providing is to close the digital divide in terms of technology first and foremost, looking for some support for school districts that are doing summer school in a hybrid model, enrichment for students in grades or ages 0 to 8. That's a competitive grant that's going to be part of the process. And there's also some of it that's going to go to post-secondary. So what we know is from the ESSER program, there's about $120 million statewide, again, based upon a Title I allocation. And again, the priorities there, technology needs, summer school, mental health programming, and there will be some grants as part of that. They just received approval from the federal government. State plans to be approved by the federal government. And so they're finalizing the school allocations. They anticipate that will be ready in early June. And so that is all I have for a financial update this evening, that we're just still waiting on some guidance and what that process will be to get those to the GEARS, which is the Government Emergency Fund, and then the ESSER funds that's part of the CARES Act that you've heard of. So that is the brief financial update for this evening.
Excellent, thank you. I will go through now and ask board members if they have any questions or comments. Tom?
No questions, thanks.
Amy?
No questions?
Rob?
I just have a question about, since we have only one meeting at the beginning of June and then not again until July, and since this is a fast-moving situation, how will we get updates if we need them without a meeting between the beginning of June and the beginning of July?
Yeah, so Rob, if there are any major changes, of course, I can share that information, with the board, via one-way email. I can share email with you. So if there's anything major, I would share that with you in that venue. And of course, certainly can talk about it, if those changes come forward. I don't anticipate any major changes in the summer between the month. I mean, we really know what the challenges are that we have ahead. We know that the key thing will be the allocation of the funds, and then for us as a district to determine what we're going to use those funds for in terms of reimbursing programs or expenses already completed. Are we going to apply them to other things for the summer? So again, we're still waiting on the guidance. I don't believe that, nothing that I've heard so far believes that requires formal board action. My anticipation, Rob, is that would be part of any budget revision that we might do moving forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Helen?
No questions or comments.
Jeff?
No questions.
Noel?
No question or comment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hillman, for that update and for your mindfulness of this aspect of the impact of COVID-19 on the school districts. The federal funding, do we know when that would come forward? Is there some timelines? I imagine that, again, there's so many moving targets. And then my second question around state, it's likely there will be a special session. Would there be some additional state dollars that could come forward, or some additional state dollars that we as districts would have the opportunity to advocate for? And when the dollars might actually be, be given to school districts to start to use?
Still to be determined. We know that we will start to get the allocations in early June, and they'll use the SERVS system, which is the way we accept all of our other kinds of title things. And so we have not yet heard when those funds would be deposited. But of course, as soon as we know which funds that we have, we can start making the plans for those allocations. As for special sessions and additional funding, I would love that. That would be great. There's nothing that, I have heard nothing that would indicate that that is a possibility. In fact, we continue to hear from our local legislators and other people who are watching the legislature to anticipate, a 0 on the base formula increase over the next 2 years, as I've mentioned before. So We have not heard anything specific on any other kinds of specialized funds for public schools. We would, of course, always advocate, for some of those kinds of funds that would help us increase access to early childhood, transportation in this difficult situation, other things that would make our schools, more safe for some of the screening kinds of things that I mentioned before. The possibility of some funding for that. And I see that Rob Hardy has used the raise hand feature.
You had mentioned last meeting about the possibility of changing the fund balance policy. What would the timing on that be? When would you likely bring that to us if we were going to consider it?
Yeah, I think, Rob, how I would do that is we would start to bring that to you in late summer, early fall. As we've mentioned before Val Murdesdorf left on her maternity leave, we do plan to use a priority-based budgeting process that we believe would start in November. And of course, we had talked about that prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and the associated financial issues with that. So I would look to have you consider that fund balance approach late summer, early fall, so that as we go into that priority-based budgeting process, that we have that target set, because that will be really important. What is the target for the fund balance? Because those are the numbers that we will use as we have determining what are we going to pay for and what are we going to prioritize moving forward. And again, as I've described, with the possibility of some restoration packages, if you will, that if the state legislature were to give us more money on the formula, here are the first things that we would add if that were to be the case. So we will really start to tee that up for you, Rob, in probably August and September.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we can move on now to approval of the consent grouping. As a reminder, there were a few personnel items in the table file that were to be added to the consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? I'll pause and let anyone note if there's anything they would like to pull. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent grouping?
So moved.
Moved by Rob. Is there a second?
Second.
So good. Amy's fine.
Second by Amy. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anita will conduct roll call vote.
Broniak,
Aye.
Berwitz,
Aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Iverson,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Stratmon,
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. Consent grouping motion carries. We'll move on now to items for individual action. We do have a few this evening. We'll start with the Cannon Valley Special Education SevSec update. I will start with the motion and then we'd have the opportunity to ask Dr. Hillman any questions. Is there a motion to authorize SevSec to enter into a 15-year lease at the Faribault West Mall for the purposes of administering special education programming as presented?
Moved.
Moved by Ellen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rob. Okay, we have an opportunity for questions and comments. I will again run through board members. Tom, questions or comments on the motion?
No questions or comments, thanks.
Amy. Amy, you are still on. There you go.
So I've been serving on the SevSec board this year, and I can say these plans are very exciting, and the vision that they have for a combined SevSec school in one place will also be a money saver in other areas. So just wanted to mention that. I think it's a very good idea.
Thank you, Amy. Rob.
I have nothing else.
Ellen.
No questions or comments.
Jeff.
Seems like a good direction to take.
Noel.
Good direction. I agree with Jeff's comment.
Okay. And I agree. I appreciate Amy, first of all, serving as our school board liaison to SevSec. And again, thank you to the work of our partner districts, Dr. Hillman, the staff administrators at SevSec for putting this together. This is just a really, really good plan moving forward. And the savings are substantial. So it's not only serving our students, I think in a better, more streamlined way, but also resulting in some significant savings to the district. So really, really good work. So we have a motion and a second. Anita will do a roll call vote.
Baraniak,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Iverson,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Stratmon,
Aye.
Excellent, motion carries. We'll move on to the second item for individual action, which is the audio visual bid approval for the elementary schools and Longfellow District Office. Good news is this project was under budget. I will ask for a motion, and then we do have Sal Bagley from Wold on the call, as well as Dr. Hillman for any questions. So is there a motion to allow a contract to be issued to Visual Services Incorporated for district-wide audio-visual at a cost of $630,000, as well as alternate number 1 for $4,200, alternate 2 for $1,400, alternate 3 for $2,650, and alternate number 4 for $3,460,000 for a total cost of $641,710 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Amy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. So we have a motion and a second. I will ask again for questions and comments. Tom, questions or comments on the audio-visual bid for the district?
No questions or comments, thanks.
Amy.
I just would love to hear what Sal has to say about it.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I think we're excited to bring you another great bid day. So you guys got 5 bids, which is a great amount of competition, I think, especially for the schedule and the scope of the work. Can be complicated to have a little bit of work at 5 different or multiple sites. So it came in a little bit under budget, which is always happy news. And then we've spent the last couple weeks just verifying that your apparent low bidder that we're recommending award to tonight met all of the specifications, which we're happy to report that they do. I can take any questions on the alternates if anybody has any, but I think it's great for the last bid of the referendum projects that it came in under budget. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Rob.
I actually have no questions. Thank you.
Ellen.
No questions.
Jeff.
No questions.
Noel.
No questions.
Okay. Well, Sal, appreciate you being here for the meeting for a couple reasons. First, to thank you for the due diligence that Wold did to go back to ensure that the scope of the project was completely understood by the Video Services, Inc. And then, of course, always the opportunity to thank you for the incredible work you are doing for us. I mean, as a member of the Project Oversight Committee and as board members, we just see things moving along so well. We are 5 for 5 for coming in on or under budget in those projects that were bid so long ago, with so many variables that are before for yourself and Knutson and the incredible work you are doing. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate the confidence, and it is we're just as excited as you are.
Oh my gosh, it's just all so crazy good. So, okay, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further questions via raise hand feature or anything anyone wants to ask, we can move forward with the vote. We will do that again. Roll call. Anita?
Baraniak,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Iverson,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Stratmon.
Aye.
Okay, excellent. Motion carries. We'll move on to our last item for individual action, which is the temporary modification to grading practices in the 2019-2020 handbooks due to distance learning and COVID-19. Dr. Hillman did do a presentation on that. I will ask at the beginning of the meeting, I'll ask for a motion, but then we would have opportunities for any last minute questions that board members would have. So is there a motion to approve the temporary grading practice changes as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Rob. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. Okay, again, opportunity for questions and comments. Tom.
Nope, no questions, comments, thanks.
Amy.
It sounds like a great plan to me. Thank you.
Rob.
I think it sounds very reasonable, and thank you.
Ellen.
I just had one question. If parents had been in the loop on, I mean, this shouldn't be a huge surprise that something new was in the works, and you've included us in your newsletters, and so I'm assuming if they're staying informed that this won't be a big surprise.
Yes, and as from the district level, we explained that there was going to be some grading practice changes, and then each individual level followed up with their families to let them know. The secondary buildings, frankly, let folks know much earlier on than the elementary schools did, because the approach was adopted much more quickly in terms of the pass, fail, and the hybrid letter grade system, and then some additional pieces were released as time had gone on.
Jeff.
Sounds good.
Noel.
I have no questions or comments.
Okay, that's great. And again, I think I appreciate Ellen asking the question around parents and you know, how they've been involved. And I think, again, the elementary school and allowing the students there to finish off with that wonderful report that really highlights distance learning for the parents in terms of really being able to see how their students were able to engage in that process. And I think that there was a lot of consideration given to how this grading practice would be modified. And I think that there has been a tremendous amount of energy and effort to reach out to students and make sure that they are set up to be successful. And we've given plenty of opportunities. And I think this next week, where students can really focus and finish up where they need to, will allow them to finish on a strong note. And we know that the support staff has just been, teachers and support staff have been incredible in terms of really reaching out to every student. So again, just a really good effort. And so it seems that board members have asked their questions about this, so we can move forward. We have a vote. We have a motion and a second, so we can move forward with the vote, and Anita will do that roll call.
Broniak,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Iverson,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Stratmon.
Aye.
Excellent, motion carries. That takes care of our items for individual action. We'll move on now for items for information. The one that we always do and look forward to is construction update number 27, Dr. Hillman.
Yes, and I'm going to ask Sal Bagley to come back on the line to just offer any observations that she has about the construction process. Our construction update this time is very similar to the last time. We recently did have a project oversight committee meeting, but construction continues nearly unabated at our main sites. Over the last 10 days, I've had a chance to tour both the Sibley site and the Greenville Park site. They are looking wonderful. They are looking as planned. It's very exciting to see the finishes really starting. Some rooms at Greenville Park actually already have some of the casework installed. We're really seeing some rapid progress. I got a chance to watch something that I'd always wanted to watch before, and I know that Noel will appreciate this. I actually got to watch them lay some of the terrazzo in the Sibley cafeteria, and really a very interesting process. So again, one of the key things is the reason that the construction has been able to continue unabated is the experience that Knutson Construction has had at the Mayo Clinic. As I've mentioned before, Knutson does a lot of projects at the Mayo Clinic, so they had all of the health kinds of protocols in place before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And so we continue unabated. We continue to, of course, Knutson tells us that there's always some chances of some things that could be delayed because of the current situation. We know the whiteboard factory has shut down, as I mentioned to you, but we think we could open a building if we needed to do something different with the whiteboards. But I would offer Sal just a very brief opportunity to share any observations she has on our construction process.
Yeah, I think I just pulled up my notes from our last conversation. So I think a lot's happening on the inside that's difficult to see as you drive by, but at New Greenville, the brick is anticipated to finish up this week, and metal panel will continue through mid-June. Some of that is a little bit of a rain-dependent activity, so probably not much happening tonight. But and then as Dr. Hillman mentioned, drywall, taping, and sanding is ongoing. So they have basically finished the first floor at the New Greenville, and they're on to the second floor. And very quickly behind them is when all of the ceiling grid and the painting and the cabinetry gets installed. And that moves at an incredibly fast pace. And then just from a site perspective, they're moving from north to south. So they have a lot of activities going on. So a lot of the activities kind of right behind the building right now, and they'll move toward the street as they finish. At Sibley, the windows and metal panels have been big activities over the past couple of weeks. They're just starting curb and sidewalks on the outside. As Dr. Hillman mentioned, they're working on terrazzo as well as some other finishes like the tile and installing light fixtures. And they have now moved into the interior demolition, in particular cutting up the concrete floor slab in the former kitchen and some interior framing. So they have started the interior remodel with the wonderful coordination from Jim Kolseth and his department getting that move done early. So they've started on the renovations earlier than anticipated, which has been a huge help to the schedule. Knutson has lots of thanks for that. And then similar to the Greenville renovation, they've obviously been able to start with some of the demolition and that early work with obviously the continuation of distance learning and the move getting done so quickly. So lots going on and a lot of it not super visible from the street. So
thanks, Sal.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. We will move forward and ask board members if they have any questions on construction projects. Tom.
Yes, Al, with the that rain was like 3.5 inches. How did the new water collection system at the New Greenville work out?
I haven't heard any complaints yet today, this morning. I guess, I don't know, Dr. Hillman, did you hear anything from Josh yesterday?
I have not heard anything at all.
I know you're getting probably a decent amount tonight, so I can certainly follow back in the morning.
I don't know, I was just curious. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
As my mother would say, no news is good news.
That's right.
That usually is the way it goes with water and construction, but.
Julie, I think you muted yourself there accidentally.
I'm sorry, I did. Amy, any questions or comments on construction projects?
Yes. Back in the olden days, a few months ago, pre-pandemic,
Yes.
We were promised a hard hat tour.
Oh.
And I don't know if it still could be done safely, but if it seems like something that could be done, I would still be interested in a hard hat tour at some point.
Yes, Amy, that is something that we are able to start scheduling again. So Anita and I will work to offer board members in groups of 2 who are interested to be able to go through the facilities. And we'll try to put them back to back so we can do it at Greenville Park and then head right over to Sibley.
Excellent, thank you.
Rob.
It's just nice to get good news regularly and on top of the other news that we get. So thank you, Sal, and thank you to Wold and Knutson.
Of course.
Ellen.
Yeah, I would just echo the thanks. And thank you for giving us the extra details tonight.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yes, thank you, Sal. Thank you, Knutson and Wold. I just drove by there today and was taking a look at that building. That is a good looking new school.
It's
We're
almost
back.
like there was a plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Joel.
Thanks for all your hard work to be able to keep things on budget and on schedule. That's a difficult thing to do during this time. So thank you.
And lots of thanks. You all have said it too. Lots of thanks to Knutson. They've had to do a lot of retweaking of construction schedules and protocols, and it is truly incredible. While your educators were kind of changing the whole game, they were doing the same thing for construction. So I'll pass your kind words on to them.
Excellent. Thank you, Sal, for being here tonight as well. We appreciate it. Long day for you.
Of course.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So construction update, thank you, Dr. Hillman and Sal. So we'll move on to future meetings. Monday, June 8th. The format for that meeting will determine closer to the meeting date, and we'll follow, of course, the guidance from the governor at that time. Then that is our only board meeting in June. We'd move on then to Monday, July 13th. One board meeting in July, and then our first board meeting in August is Monday, August 10th. Those meetings all meet at 7 p.m. Location will be determined based on, again, guidance from the governor at that time. So again, thanks everyone for a great meeting. We certainly look forward to a time when we can all be together. So in the meantime, take care, stay well, and I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn. Noel.
Excellent. We have a motion to adjourn by Noel. Is there a second?
So moved.
Second. Yes.
Second by Amy. Excellent. We have a motion and a second. Anita, your last roll call vote of the meeting will be for adjournment.
Broniak,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Iverson,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Stratmon.
Aye.
Excellent. Motion carries. We are adjourned.